I want those of you that recognize what Jacque said late in his past when he went to school. One of his teachers wanted him to pledge allegiance to the flag. He chose not to. Instead, he actually said, he pledges allegiance to the world and everyone in it. And actually, to demonstrate this, let me just take this down. Now, he will tell you why.
You want to sit down?
I would like you people to tell me what the object is that I'm about to draw. I'm not going to finish it. I'm just going to do a little bit of it. And I don't know if it comes out upside down or straight.
He's drawing it. So
Tell me what this is before I finish the drawing.
You can draw it right side up because it turns it around, right, Kevin? Because you knew what it was, I didn't.
What do you think that is?
I don't know which way. Somebody said a boat.
Who said a boat?
Yeah, over there.
Okay, that's what it is. Tell me who this is. This is a personality.
Let me give you another one.
A-plane.
They guessed it, Jacque.
Yes,
They guessed it.
who said Lincoln?
Yeah, they got
You
it.
had it. You got it right. The brain can put things together before they're finished. All you have to see is a little bit. And that's where I got my training. On the island of Tuamotu, my teacher said that the male has a natural behavior toward the female. I said, how do you know that? How do you know it isn't conditioned by society? She said, well, what else can it be? So when I got to Tuamotu, the people wore no clothing. It was tropical, and they wore no clothing. And the male of the island never stared at the female body. They always looked at the eyes of a female when they talked to them. I went into all their huts, and none of them had a picture of a nude woman, because they were nude ever since they were knee-high to a grasshopper, ever since they were little. So they never looked at the female body. And there were no peeping toms on the island. I wonder if you can understand that. They never wore clothing. Even since they were little tots, they never wore clothing. So the boys and girls walked around nude until they were of departure age. In other words, they were shaped by the culture they lived in. There was nothing to see. Then the missionaries came, and they built a temporary church of canvas, and they made T-shirts for the girls, because they didn't want the girls to come in nude to the church. So they made T-shirts for them, and the girls put the T-shirts on, and they cut 2 holes in the T-shirt, because they were uncomfortable. Can you understand that? If everybody in America had a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done so you look like everybody else. There's no such thing as beauty. If normal people had a pointed head and 2 horns, you'd fall in love with them. There's no such thing as beauty. This is made up by man. Man says that's a beautiful woman, and that woman is not too attractive. That's all a question of values, the way you're brought up. If you were brought up in the Arab world, it'd be normal for your daddy to have 4 wives, if he can afford it. And if he beat each one of them 3 times a day to teach them things, that would be normal to you. Do you understand? So whatever you see out there is normal. Normal to that culture. If you were brought up in China as a baby, you'd speak Chinese and walk like a Chinese girl, and you'd have your arms in your sleeves and you'd bow like a Chinese. You wouldn't know anything American. So what you see, if you're brought up in France as a baby, you'd be a Frenchman. You speak only French if you're brought up as a baby, if you don't read any books or travel anywhere. So your environment shapes your behavior. If you ask an American Indian, tell him you can have anything you want, what do you want? He will never ask for a Mercedes. He will never ask for twin-engine Beechcraft because he doesn't know they exist. He will only ask for a bow and arrow that's straight. So people cannot reflect anything but the environment they're brought up in. Now, you're told that Beethoven was a great musician. If Beethoven or Bach were dropped by parachute over a headhunted village in the Amazon as a baby without any training, and you said, and you met him when he was 30 years old, say, what do you do? I'm a headhunter. He wouldn't have written any of the symphonies. Do you understand that? That's where people get their ideas. They do not come from outer space and into the head. A man doesn't sit down and say, I'm going to make a shovel, or I'm going to make a movie camera, or I'm going to make a camera. Somewhere in the line of his life, he experienced that. They used to make houses out of mud in the Holy Land, but they had no windows, no glass for windows, so it was very dark in there. So they made a hole in the mud. The minute they made a hole in the mud, the outside scenery was projected on a wall, upside down. And they called it the House of Virtual Images. And they charged 2 pieces of silver for you to see the upside down world. They didn't know what made it happen, but that's what made it happen. That's where the box camera came from. And somebody said, well, Tesla invented the wireless. How can a man sit down and say, I'm going to make a wireless, or I'm going to make an electric light? He can't do that. he sees something in nature, and this is what he saw. When you bought electric wire from an electric company, they wrapped it around a cardboard tube, and you took that wire home. But sometimes the wire was broken, so they ran an electric current through the coil to make sure it wasn't broken. If there was a coil nearby, this activated coil induced a current in the stationary coil that was laying on the table. It wasn't even connected. That's where Tesla got the idea for the wireless. He didn't think about it. He didn't say, I'm going to make a wireless. No man ever said, I'm going to make a flying machine. They tell you that the Wright brothers in school made the first airplane. They could not do that because they wouldn't know how big to make the wings. Do you make them 3 feet long, 8 feet long? You don't know. Do you make the propeller this size, You don't know. So you try different things. Those that don't work, you set aside. Those that work, you use. The Wright brothers corresponded with a guy named Otto Lilienthal, who wrote the first book on aeronautics. He wrote the book on aerodynamics. And the Wright brothers read their books. Otherwise they couldn't know how possibly the wings. A Frenchman saw a bird flying. And he says, you know, I can fly if I made 2 wings and strapped them on me. He didn't know how big to make the wings. He made them 3 feet long on each side. And he beat the air. He says, I'm sure I can fly. And he jumped off the Eiffel Tower. And he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make the wings larger next time. It's the only way you learn. There is no other way. Nobody invented anything. They all got it from nature, from some phenomena they observed. And I wanted you to know you are all equivalent to Leonardo da Vinci. If you're brought up to be creative, what is a creative person? They say, well, it's inborn. It's not inborn. There's nothing inborn. A male says to another male, hey, look at that chick. She's well stacked. That's where the men get the ideas from, other men. They're not born that way. You're not born anyway. If you're raised by 3 effeminate women that use their hands when they talk, oh, did I see a gorgeous hat? A boy raised by 3 women that are very feminine will behave just like a woman. Exactly. He's not born gay. If you were brought up by 3 effeminate women, you'd walk like a woman, you'd talk like a woman, and think like a woman. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you're brought up in China or France as a baby, without any books from America, you behave like a Frenchman. You understand that? You can't behave any different than a Frenchman. And if you're brought up in Germany, after Hitler burned the books, you'd say, Heil Hitler, Deutschland über alles, Germany above all. Because that's all you're taught. And you behave like Americans, not because it's instinct, but because that's what you're taught. There's no such thing as a human nature. They tell you, oh, it's human nature. There's no such thing. It's the way you're brought up that makes you react to the world around you. And if you don't believe that, travel to islands, and you'll find out that even in America, they say, give me the good old days. There never were any good old days. They burned thousands of women in Salem, Massachusetts as witches. How many of you knew that? Thousands of women were burned alive because they were accused of being a witch. And they were accused of getting on a broom and flying all over. So, there never were any good old days. There were slaves in the old days. Same person said, give me the good old days. There never were any good old days. So I'm just telling you the truth. I'm trying to give you a cerebral enema. The thing I always shoot that they put in your head. Now a lot of you have the name of the chair company. You've been sitting here a long time on your butt. And I'm sure that you understand what I'm saying when I say no one can sit down and say, I'm going to make a wireless. There's no reference for a wireless. Tesla did not invent a wireless. He was testing a coil of wire. And when he had a coil nearby, it induced a current in that coil. That's where it came from. It didn't come from outer space into his body. No invention ever came from outer space. It came directly from the environment. And all of you can be as creative as Leonardo da Vinci if you're brought up in an environment that generates creativity. What kind of environment is that? You have to show a kid pictures of Chinese people, and you have to show that kid that there are millions of Chinese people in China, and there are millions of black people in Africa. You have to show a kid the more you show a kid, the broader the mind. If you don't show a kid anything, if he just brought up in Weehawken County and he never sees anything but Weehawkenites, he just has the limitations of a Weehawkenite. Do you understand that? That's where the difference comes. The difference of exposure. The more you're exposed to, the broader the mind. And the less you're exposed to, the dumber you are. And America is a very dumb country. Where did we get this from? From the Indians. The Indians didn't ask us to come over and build whatever you want. They were told that they're savages and we know what to do with the land. And we took the land away from the Indian by shooting Indians or by starving them. So the government offered money for people that killed Indians or if they shot buffalo that the Indians ate. We tried to starve the Indians or slaughter them because we call them savages. We're the savages. We shot the Indians. We shot them with guns and they fought us with bow and arrows, which is no way to defend yourself. So the Indians to this day have no voice in anything. And women were not allowed to vote in America. Just 60, 70 years ago, they weren't allowed to vote. It was only recently that women had the right to vote. Women in the future will be in politics. There'll be as many women as there are men. No more, no less. And women will have equal rights. If a woman becomes an engineer, she doesn't earn as much as a male engineer. Did you know that? So I'm just telling you, women are still abused by this country. And they will continue to be abused. And even if you tell women that they're equal to men, they don't believe that. Because they really believe the propaganda that women are not curious enough to be engineers. Yes, they're just as curious as men, and they can be anything they want to be in the future.